Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Enoch tutorial, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the notification bell for watching so you can receive every bit of update from this channel. In today's tutorial, we are going to look at the structure and the basic units or the functions of a cell. That is what makes the cell the functional unit of life. A cell, we define a cell as a basic unit and a functional unit of life. So what makes up a cell the functional unit of a life? The cell is made of several components which we call the organelles, which all perform specific functions inside the cell. So they make the cell the functional unit of life. So in this video, we're going to look at the functions of the various components of the cell and so how the cell look in both plants and animals. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the notification bell after watching so you can receive every bit of update from this channel. Basically, we have two main categories of a cell. We have what we call prokaryotic cells and also eukaryotic cells, which we're going to look at in the next few slides. Cells are made of outer membrane and the inner watery content. The watery content of a cell is called the cytoplasm or the cytosol. The cytosol is made of several components, which is called the organelles. So in seen here, this is an organelle, this is an organelle, this is an organelle. All these ones are organelles. You can have a smooth endoplasmic reticulum, you can have mitochondria, have rough endoplasmic reticulum, you can have Golgi apparatus, you can have lysosomes, you can have ribosomes, you can have the nucleus, you can have centrioles, and the microfilament. All these ones are found inside the watery content of the cell, which you call the cytoplasm. These are what we call the organelles. The organelles we are found in the cell can have a membrane around them, or they may not have a membrane around them. If a cell has a membrane around its organelles, we call that cell an eukaryotic cell. If a cell lacks a membrane around its organelles, we call it a prokaryotic cell. So a prokaryotic cell or a prokaryote is a cell that lacks a nucleus or a membrane-bound organelle. Here we say it lacks a nucleus in the sense that all the nuclear materials are scattered in the cytoplasm. So for prokaryotic cells, all the nuclear material like DNA and the rest are all scattered in the cytoplasm because they lack a membrane-bound nucleus and organelle. A typical example of a prokaryotic cell is a bacteria, which is a very simple type of cell. Bacteria are very single, they are circular, they have a circular chromosome, which is called a plasmid. So an example of a prokaryotic cell is a bacteria which has a circular chromosome or which has a plasmid. So now let's look at how a bacteria looks like. If this is a prokaryotic cell like a bacteria, it has a core central region we call a nucleus. So the nuclear region is a region which contains the DNA, which is scattered in the cytoplasm. It is surrounded by a cell membrane and a cell wall. Their cell walls are made of what we call a peptidoglycan layer, which is made of a peptide and amino acids. A peptide and also glucose. It is a heteropolysaccharide molecule made of an amino acid, or let's say a peptide glycan sugars interlinked with amino acids. It contains ribosomes, of course, ribosomes which helps in protein synthesis. The ribosomes has no membrane and they are found in the cytoplasm to make proteins. So the main function of ribosomes of bacteria or prokaryotic cell, or even in a cell, is to help in the synthesis of protein, which we call a translation. The other type of a cell is what we call an eukaryotic cell. These ones have a membrane-bound organelles. The membrane-bound organelles. So we have three basic cell structures. We can have the nucleus, we can have the cell membrane, then we can have the cytoplasm with all the organelles. So all the organelles in an eukaryotic cells are found in the cytoplasm, even together with the nucleus. So as seen here, the outer membrane of an eukaryotic cell is called the cell membrane. The watery content of the eukaryotic cell is called the cytoplasm. And the core organelle inside the cytoplasm is called the nucleus. The nucleus, of course, is made of the nuclear material like DNA. We are going to look at them in one after the next few slides. So this we see they are organelles because they all have a membrane bound around them inside the cell. So we say this is a cell They are organelles because they have a membrane around them. That defines what we call an eukaryotic cell. So what are organelles? So organelles are very microscopic structures inside the cytoplasm of a cell which perform various functions for the cell, and they may or may not be membrane bounded. So if they are membrane bounded, then it means they are found in eukaryotic cell. If they have no membrane around them, then they are found in prokaryotic cell. Let's look at the typical plant cell organelles here. So this is a plant cell which has an outer cell wall, an inner plasma membrane, and a cytoplasm made of chloroplast, peroxisomes, Golgi apparatus, ribosomes, smooth endoplasmic reticulum. It has the nucleus with the nucleus inside them. So these are the main organelles in a plant cell, which are also found in animal cell with the exception of chloroplast. So we're going to look at the structures of these organelles one by one. We're going to take them one by one and look at the functions they play in an organism. The first one is the cell or the plasma membrane. The cell membrane is composed of a double layer of phospholipids and proteins. So as seen here, this is a cell membrane. It is made of phospholipids. So phospholipids are basically lipids made of a glycerol backbone, fatty acids, phosphate groups, and alcohols. So as seen here, this is a phospholipid. It has a glycerol head and also a fatty acid tails. So we see the plasma membrane is made of a bilayer of phospholipids and proteins. So proteins are also found in the bilayer. The proteins can be outside the membrane or inside the membrane. They surround outside of all type of cells. So being it an eukaryotic cell, a prokaryotic cell, a plant cell, animal cell, fungal cell, or in protein cells, they all have the cell membrane that surround them, and they are made of two layers of phospholipids and protein. Their main function is to control the entry of substances in and out of the cell. We say they are living layer because they are made of living proteins. So this is a structure. We can have the cell membrane itself, which is made of bilayer phospholipids. We can have embedded proteins here, which sometimes serve as transporters of substance across the membrane. We can have proteins also, which can be integral or let's say peripheral, and also carbohydrate chains, which are mostly found outside the membrane. So now let's classify phospholipids. Phospholipids is made of glycerol, the phosphates, and a hydrophilic portion. The glycerol is the head, which is hydrophilic. The phosphate is also bonded to the head. It also has an alcohol, and the hydrophobic portion is the fatty acid tail. So the tails are made of fatty acids, and they are the hydrophobic. They're hydrophobic in the sense that they repel water molecule. They make up a bilayer where tails point inward towards each other. So for the bilayer as seen here, the tails of the phospholipids point inside each other, while the head point outside. This arrangement is very important because the tails tends to create a more of a hydrophobic environment where the proteins can embed, or let's say where insoluble substance can be transported across. Then outside and inside are the hydrophilic portion. So outside the cell is an aqueous portion, which must have a strong interaction with the glycerol. Then inside the cytoplasm too is an aqueous portion, which also needs a strong interaction with the glycerol head. They can move laterally to allow small molecules like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water. So the tails are seen here can move, they can swing apart, so they can allow the entry of substances like oxygen and carbon dioxide in and out of the cell. So we see the molecules in a cell membrane are always constantly moving. So aside the lipids, you can have proteins, even sometimes cholesterol, which are found inside the cell membrane, and they are constantly moving because they are not fixed. Factors affect their movement like temperatures, pH, and the rest all affect the movement of substances inside the cell. Now let's look at the cell membrane proteins. So we said the cell membrane is made of proteins. So what are the cell membrane proteins? Proteins help to move large molecules or aid in cell recognition. So as in here, proteins are found inside the membrane or outside the membrane. Their main function is to help in transportation of molecules inside and out of the cell. It also helped in cell recognition because some of the proteins act as receptors on the surface of the membrane, which helps the cell to be recognized. We have two main types of proteins inside the cell membrane here. We can have what we call peripheral proteins, which are just attached to the surfaces of the cell, and also the integral protein, which runs inside or which is embedded inside the cell membrane. Let's look at the cell membrane implant. The cell membrane implant just lies under the cell wall, and that pushes against the cell wall to maintain the shape. So the cell wall comes first, followed by the cell membrane, and the cell membrane has a direct contact with the cell wall and it pushes around or against the cell wall to give a shape of the plant cell. Let's look at the cell wall of plant or the cell wall of a cell. The cell wall, we say it is a non-living layer found in plants, not in plants alone. It is also found in bacteria and also fungi. It is basically made of cellulose in plant. It is made of peptidoglycan in bacteria, and it is made of chitin in fungi. All these three molecules are all polysaccharides, which gives some more of a rigidity to the cells. So we have complex polysaccharides like cellulose, peptidoglycan, and also chitin. All these three are found in the cell wall, and they more give some kind of compactness to the cell wall of the cell. Their main function is to support and protect the cell, and they are found outside the cell membrane of the cell. Now let's come to cytoplasm and discuss the organelles in them. The cytoplasm is just a jelly-like substance which is enclosed by the cell membrane. They help to provide a medium for chemical reaction to take place. So they are made of all the molecules needed for the cell's reaction. Water is there, sugar is there, ions are there, ATP is there, everything, almost all the compounds required for the cell metabolic reaction is found in the cytoplasm. And these molecules run in and out of the various organelles. Let's look at inside the nucleus. The nucleus is basically made of the genetic material, the DNA, which exists as chromatin. So the chromatin is just, we say it's condensed form, it is invisible form of the DNA in the body. The chromatin is just a wrap of a DNA molecule around a histone protein. Now chromatin tends to become visible when there is a need for cell division. And when chromatin becomes visible, they form what we call chromosomes. So chromosome is just a visible portion of the chromatin. So here, DNA is spread out and appear as chromatin. So chromatin is just a coil of the DNA molecule around what you call a histone protein. DNA is condensed and wrapped around proteins, forming what? Chromosomes. So during cell division, these chromatin fibers or chromatin wrap around a protein to form what we call a chromosome, which becomes visible during cell division. Then what is the main role of DNA? DNA is basically the hereditary material of the cell that help in the transmission of traits from parents to offsprings. They are made of genes that code for particular protein to enable the proteins to be synthesized. That is the main function of the DNA in the body, or in the cell. Let's look at some complex or some structure called the cytoskeleton. These cytoskeletons, they are more like fibers or skeletons found inside the cell that give some kind of a stretch or the stress structure of some kind of rigidity to the cell. So they are called a skeleton because they are very rigid. They help to maintain the cell shape. They help to move organelles around, but they are made of proteins. An example of that is a microfilament which is made of an actin protein, and also a microtubule, which is made of what we call a tubulin. One of these is what we call a centriole. Centriole is basically found only in animal cells. They are paired structures near the nucleus made of microtubules. So the centrioles here, they are more of invisible structures in the cell, but they only appear when there is cell division. When there is cell division, centrioles appear at the opposite ends of the cell, then develop what we call the spindle fibers, which tend to detach the sister chromatids at their point of attachment we call the centromere. So the centrioles does not appear in the cell anyhow. They only appear in the cell when there is a need for cell division. When there is cell division, centrioles appear at the opposite poles of the cell. Then they develop what we call spindle fibers. The spindle fibers grow and get attached to the chromosomes at their kinetochore, that's their point of attachment, and split the centromere so that you can have a splitted sister chromatids together during cell division. That is the main role of the centrioles. The next one is what we call the mitochondrion. The mitochondrion we say is the powerhouse of the cell because it is the site where all the processes needed for energy production occur. They are the site for generation of cellular ATP, that is the form or the stored form of energy in the body. They are more active cells like muscles, and they have more like active cells like muscles have more mitochondria because they always need ATP for their action. They are the main site for cellular respiration, which runs from glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain. So it is a site for cellular respiration and the burning of glucose to produce energy. There is an interesting fact I have to discuss here. For that mitochondria comes from cytoplasm in the egg during cell division. So seen here, mitochondria just come from the cytoplasm of the cell of the egg, which means that you human beings, you inherit your mitochondria from your mother because their mother that contains the egg or that produces the egg during fertilization. So if the mitochondria come from the egg during fertilization, it means that every human being inherits his or her mitochondria from your mother. Now let's look at the next organelle we call the endoplasmic reticulum. So the endoplasmic reticulum, we say, is a network of hollow membrane tubules that connect the nuclear envelope to the cell membrane. There is a system inside the cell we call the endomembrane system. The endomembrane system helps in transport of material from the cell across the cytoplasm to the cell membrane and even outside. These three organelles form what we call an endomembrane system. So the endoplasmic reticulum forms a connection between the cell membrane and also the nucleus. They function in the synthesis of and transport. So endoplasmic reticulum helps in synthesis of protein. We have two main types of that. We have what they call the rough endoplasmic reticulum and also the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Now the rough one has ribosomes on their surface, hence they help in formation of or making of proteins. And the proteins are being exported out of the cell across the endomembrane system, which makes up of the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, then the cell membrane. So the rough one has ribosomes on them, hence they are thread-like. They have a thread-like, or they are thread-like into the interior of the rough endoplasmic reticulum to be modified and transported. Ribosomes are basically made of proteins and RNA. So the production site of protein in the cell is the ribosome. So we got ribosomes the protein factories because that is where proteins are made. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum helps in transport of some molecules, whereas rough helps in synthesis of proteins because they have ribosomes on their surfaces. They are made to join amino acids to make proteins during protein synthesis or translation. So the ribosomes serve a function of just joining the amino acids stepwise, one by one. So the amino acids are basically the smallest units of protein, or the basic units of protein breakdown, or the end product of protein digestion. It is made of carbon, amino group, carboxylic acid group, and a side chain which differ among various amino acids. So ribosomes can be attached to a rough, or let's say a rough endoplasmic reticulum, or it can be free in the cytoplasm. Let's look at the last organelle and we can end the video here. So the organelle, last one we are going to discuss here is called the Golgi body or the Golgi apparatus, which is made of stacks of flattened stacks which have a shipping site and a receiving site. So this is Golgi apparatus. It has a shipping site and a receiving site. The main function of the Golgi apparatus, Golgi bodies, is to help in transport of proteins and other molecules. When proteins are synthesized and need to be transported, the Golgi apparatus receives the protein and coils it around what they call a vesicle. A vesicle is just a round membrane-bound protein molecule which can be transported across the cytoplasm outside the cell. So the main function of the Golgi apparatus is help to transport of proteins by formation of vesicles. They look like a stack of pancakes as seen here. So they are stacked on each other and they serve or they look like a pancake. Aside the transport, they also help to modify, sort, and also package substances from endoplasmic reticulum for storage and also transport. So they can store and also transport. So these are just few or summarized functions of the organelles in the cell. Don't forget to subscribe for watching so you can receive every bit of update from this channel. Thank you.